everyone. This is going to be a little nerve-wracking tonight because I don't have my Brandy with me. She is not my licker, my assistant. Unfortunately, Brandy has COVID again. So I am running the show completely by myself, which is a little nerve-wracking, especially since I just got a new computer. You might see a little bit more detail in my face, maybe a couple more wrinkles. I've got a new Mac and it's got a better camera, but of course it's got all sorts of different sign-ons and everything, so please bear with me. I have been watching the feed. It's just amazing how many of you are here already. I see the usual suspects like Nancy Cox and John from Art East, but so many of you from all over. Let's just take a look at you here. We got Domestic Dark Arts. That sounds interesting. Somebody from Germany, St. Louis, Missouri. Yes, get well, Brandy. Everybody, let's just send her our best wishes. So, what's new? It's been a busy month. Some of you have just saw me last week. If you're a member of my quilt crew, we had a wonderful, nice Zoom meeting on Sunday. That was really nice to get together with everyone. Last week I was in Calgary. I had a session, a 3-day intensive threadology workshop. I think they call it threadification or thread education, I think is their term that they like to call it. And I have my new Bernina 790, and I can do a lot of surface work with that. I'm not sure how deep I'm going to get into embroidery, but I definitely have things that I want to make for Christmas that will have embroidery on it. So learning all about threads and how they work. Oh, look at you all. Carol's from Queensland, and I saw somebody from the UK. So we've got the whole world covered here. Anybody here from South Africa? I wonder if we've got anybody here from Malaysia too. Can I put the link for the orange and white pattern? It is STASHBUSTER number 6. It's the one, the no-fail layer cake method. So just go to my website. I think that's going to be a little tricky for me, but let me just see if I can grab it in here. It's just under downloads. So let me just go over here. See, this is what Brandy is always so good at. Just get it done. Quilts, patterns, downloads. So the STASHBUSTER. So here is the link to the STASHBUSTER patterns. All of them are there, and not only do you have a link to the STASHBUSTERs, you also have a link to pre-quilt and the coloring pages, so you can make it how you want it. You can color it whatever way you want. So Cornwall, UK. Okay. Della's from Cornwall, UK. I have a lot of family from Cornwall, Ontario. So oh, somebody from Florida. Anybody from the cruise in the group here? Wonder if Tracy's here. Or, okay, I'll just wait till those catch up. Let me just start with a couple of the questions that came online. Jessica Reinschmidt has asked me, now that I've had some time to distance myself from my 4th of July, will I ever attempt another Quilt Works or Judy Niemeyer quilt? I don't think so, at least not in the immediate future. I've got a lot of other quilts that I would like to make beforehand. It's just, I'm not really fond of those spiky patterns, and I mean they're quite gorgeous, and the ones that I see online are beautiful, but it's just not me. So I don't think I will be doing another one anytime soon. Let's see if we got any here. Christine Decay has asked, can I name my favorite fabric stores in Toronto? Well, funny enough, I am working on a video on where to buy fabric in Toronto, so just stay tuned because those will be coming out in August. We've done all the main footage, we just have to get them edited and get live. Let me just flag some here. Okay. The next question was, what is my next long-term project? Well, I am trying to finish off my new hexagon. It's just takes a little bit of brain space to get around it. I'm finishing off last year's 100 days, 100 blocks right now. Definitely working very hard to do that. And I have a traveling quilt after that, and then I have my hazelnut quilt after that, and my scrap adding machine tapes after that. So I'm not taking on any more projects until that. But I think once I get my hem project done, my new hexagon, I'm going to be moving into some Sue Spargo quilts. I have collected her fabric and her threads for years. I have even a complete block of the month that I've never done. So that's probably going to be my next one. Here we go. Carrie Webb has asked, how do you tell if a fabric is 100% cotton? Well, truly it's a burn test. You just take a lighter to it, and if it smells like singed hair, then it's more cotton. If you see any hint of melting, then it's got some poly in it. But often it's the sheen as well. So there's a couple of different things that you can work with it. Lisa, my buddy from Ottawa here, has asked me, what is the quilt behind me? This is my second quilt along that I did with Gnome Angel, and it's called the Long Time Gone Quilt. And as you can see, I've made mine extremely scrappy. And I made a couple of mistakes on it, and this block is my own, this maple leaf block. I subbed that in because I did something wrong. Actually, it was this one. I did this one the wrong size, so I had to rejig a couple of things. But yeah, it will be a long time before I do 3-inch churn dashes again. And you might be wondering why it's in my studio. It's because I am on a mission to put labels on all my quilts, and I was putting a label on it the other day. And that's what I was doing. I was on a Zoom call and I was just putting a label on it. Am I coming to Quilt Canada in Halifax? It is on the calendar. I am definitely trying to get to Halifax. John and I will definitely have to have a coffee. And I'm sure there's some other people. Hello, Sobecca. Love to see you here. Teresa. So Becca, ever since you showed me that Monica quilt the other day, I've been thinking I should be making a Monica quilt too. And if anybody else is wondering what a Monica quilt, it is a red and white quilt that was in Friends. And Becca tracked it through all sorts of different episodes, and she's currently making one. Teresa Simmons Ebley has asked, what's an easy way to figure the length of patch borders so patches come out even and not chopped at the ends? She's a newbie and she hasn't learned the math yet. So when you're making borders, one of the really important things that you need to do is not make it bigger, because then you're going to have waves in the sides. So you really want to make sure that it's accurate. But that doesn't mean that your patches have to go to all the ends. You can easily put in pieces at the very end to fill in the difference. Just center it and then fill it in. And I even met a woman last year that a really prominent quilter who just chops her blocks. She had an instructor said that don't even fuss over it, just chop them up. So it's your choice. You can put fillers on the end, you can put fillers in the middle depending on how many blocks you're using, but that's the easiest way to do it when you don't want to figure out the math. JC Towen is asking, what is the difference between traditional and modern guilds? I'm new and I hand piece and trying to find some buddies. I would say the difference in Canada between traditional guilds and modern guilds is the modern guilds belong to the mothership, the Modern Quilt Guild in the US, but that's not necessarily true about traditional guilds. And traditional guilds may be older, meaning they'll have probably a broader range of ages in it. Some of them, like all organizations, it's just one cohort going through. One cohort going through. Where modern, but both of them are grabbing new people all the time. So traditional guilds all guilds, you know, they have a formula of why are they getting together. So it's to share information, but some of them are really committed to the community. Some of them are really committed to, on top of community, doing a quilt show and fundraisers, and you just have to shop around and find one that fits you. I know personally, my own guild, we don't do a lot of the extracurricular because so many people work and they just don't have that free time. Where if you find an older group and they're more of them are retired or stay-at-home parents or people, they might have more time on their hands and they will commit to those type of things. So that's that. Lori Clark has asked, we all have fave colors. Are there any colors I don't like? Do you feel it's necessary to try to incorporate them, or is it okay to avoid them? Any color that doesn't make you feel good, don't worry about it. There are so many other colors of the rainbow. If it brings you, if you've got a negative reaction to a color, make sure it's not in your stash. But there are colors that you like and there's colors that you don't like. And it is learning how to use them and how do they support the colors that you do like. Because if you just use one shade of pink or you just use one shade of blue, you're not going to get the contrast that you want. So learn to analyze them. Like a lot of people don't like brown, but you don't realize that brown is not a brown. Brown is not a color. Brown is either a desaturated yellow or desaturated orange or desaturated red, and some of them are a little greeny too. Just like gray. Pure gray is very rare. There's always a little hint of purple or a hint of blue or a hint of green in them. So just learn what colors they are and they will support the other colors that you're working with. And the color that I don't like to work with is black and white, and guess what I'm doing for my 100 days quilt? I am using black and white in primary colors, so totally out of my comfort zone. Mary Reiber has asked, did you make the Heart of a Lion block from your interview with Verushka Zarate? And I have not, but it's on my hopeful list of things I will get done. Yeah. Okay, so from before, I think this came through on Facebook. Susan Draper has asked, I have a mountain of scraps, mostly small piece charms or less. What are your suggestions for taking any pattern that might not be designed for scraps and making it scrappy? It goes back to color, which of course is my favorite topic, so let me just talk about it. We get really obsessed with these are the red ones and these are the black, the blue ones and these are the yellow ones, and dividing them up into color. But when you are trying to make a scrappy quilt from a pattern, you need to take a look at value. These are the dark ones, these are the medium ones, these are the light ones. And value is going to carry you all the way. So you may want to make a blue block, but you're looking at the pattern to see where the dark colors are, where the medium colors are, and where the light. And you may even have 5 categories. You may have a dark, a medium dark, a medium light, a light. Just take a look at it and divide up your scraps into those zones. And then you can subdivide them. You know, you can grab all the reds in that little area or all the warms and then all the colds and go from there. And it's that contrast that you want to maintain. And that's how you make any pattern scrappy. Okay, so Wade, my buddy Wade, I haven't seen you lately, Wade. I hope you're all okay. Lately, he has come across many patterns with incorrect measurements. How can one recover from this after you've cut and pieced? Well, it's hard after you cut and piece, so it's fair warning to everyone. If you buy a commercial pattern, make sure you go to the person's website and just see whether they've got a errata, I think that's how you pronounce it, errata page. You know, that's where they post all their known errors. The other thing to do is to just go through your pattern ahead of time and do the math yourself. Make sure, because despite their best efforts. You know, a pattern goes through their hands, it goes through a graphic designer's hands, it goes through a proofer's hands, and those little 1/4 inches can be off a bit. Sometimes it's really obvious. I know I had a friend who had a pattern in Quilt Mania, and it was just so obvious. I think they said to order, you know, 25 yards of the fabric, you know, when it should have been just 5. Those ones are easier to catch. It's when you're supposed to cut your blocks 4 inches and they make that you cut them 3 3/4. Those are the hard ones because it's just a touch off. What can you do? If it's a cutting mistake, and I've certainly done that, I've grabbed the wrong fabric, just splice it together. Just put a splice in it. Nobody's gonna, once it's quilted, nobody's gonna know the difference. And I do have a quilt right here. Give me 2 seconds. Ha. Here we go. Let me just see if I can find the one that had the one fabric I couldn't recover from. Of course, I cut it wrong. So here's one. You can barely see that now that it's quilted. There's a nice seam running down the center of that block. So it may seem really stressful when you've just done it, but you can easily splice it, and once it's quilted, not many people are going to know the difference. So just breathe. It will work out in the end. And it can be, then you can tell them it's a design choice. You just add it a little bit of texture. Yeah. That's it. Quilts, I think is how you pronounce. As soon as there's no longer daylight in her sewing space or his sewing space, I find I have to stop with even with fairly good overhead lights. What are your solutions for lighting and maybe magnification? Yeah, light is really tough, especially on old eyes. Truly, when I sew, I use much stronger readers than I use on my computer. And that's one way to help with the magnification, but you really need good overhead light. I have a beautiful bar that comes across my station. I bought it from the Daylight Company at the last QuiltCon I was at in 2018. It's a lovely, lovely light. But I also have a lot of light in my space. I have 2 photography lights. I don't have an overhead light because I can't have anything on my ceilings, but I've got a light right beside me. I've got the light on the sewing machine. I have the daylight, and then I have 2 photography lights. And I make a policy not to make any color selections at night because color changes with light. So I always choose my colors in the daylight. There are also stick-on lights that you can buy for your sewing machine to help with the illumination, or you just choose to sit in another part of the house and do hand sewing at that time of day. But that's how much light I have to bring into my sewing space. So bring it close, and there's never too much. Nancy PW has asked, do I wash my quilts at home or do I go to the laundromat and use the large or extra large capacity front loaders? I can do a twin at home in my machine, but I like to take them to the laundromat and do them there so they have a little bit of space to move around. Otherwise, if there's not enough space, then there's not enough friction within it to actually clean it. So that's where I do those. The only time I've used change coinage in the last 2 years, I think I had to get some quarters to use in my machine. I took a couple not last week, but last month. Carmen Bailey has asked, love to hear my views on fabric markers. She recently used Clover's yellow chalk marker on white fabric, and that was a big mistake. So I'm not really an expert on markers, but the people that I follow online that swear by these markers. The blue ones that disappear with humidity and water, and then there's the, I think this purple one disappears with heat. And yeah, I know in certain climates it's difficult because the humidity is so high or the heat is so high, and they will disappear before they actually get used. I also have a, I believe it's pronounced Bohin, triple lead pencil, and that so then you just choose what lead works best for the fabric. And actually, my next video is going to be about it. So, yeah. Tiffany of Quilting Life has asked, how am I liking long arm quilting? I must say that I felt the last time I put a quilt on the long arm, I felt I could feel my improvement, and I'm liking it. That said, I haven't had a quilt of my own on the long arm for over 2 months. So I've got to get back at it. I don't know why I haven't had any finishes recently. I had that burst of baby quilts and then a couple of other ones, and I've had some friends come by and be quilting theirs on my long arm, which has been really good because we've had to problem solve. A lot of them want to do those beautiful straight lines, and if the blocks aren't straight, how do you do that? So a lot of good problem solving, and I felt I learned a lot. And as they're having problems and I'm able to solve them, that's when I realize how far along I've come. So hopefully 1 year. I'm hoping to really try some free motion and get out of my comfort zone with this 100 days block. 100 days, 100 blocks, 2021 quilt. I may even label the video trying to be Angela Walters. Yeah. See who else we have here. Oh boy, lots of wonderful comments here. Does cotton or embroidery type thread get old, and if so, should I get rid of it? If it was made within your lifetime, you're probably okay. But there's a lot of older threads, and it depends on how it was stored, right? Any thread that has lint on it should be tossed because it's just too much stress on your machine. The older polyesters will become brittle as well, but you don't necessarily have to throw it out. This is the real thing that you need to know, is that you don't want to be halfway through a project and realize it's crumbling on you. If it's in doubt, just keep it to the side and use it when you're basting, or use it when you're just making Halloween costumes and things like that. Things that don't have to last for the rest of somebody's lifetime. And use your good stuff on your quilt. You're going to invest a lot of hours in your quilt. Use the good stuff. Yeah. What do I wash my quilt in, detergent-wise? I just used the regular Tide. I didn't use a lot of it. My intention with the my washing this past time was in shrinkage. I wanted it to be smaller. I'd made it a little bit too big, but you don't want to use it too mild. If it's been used a lot, the thing that's going to make it dirty is that it's been close to people. If it's just dirt, then just use regular wash machine. But you've got to, if it's, body, if it's urine, if it's sweat and things like that, you just need to use a detergent that can deal with those type of proteins, and make sure that you're washing it at the right temperature. I'm not going to give you any guidance on which one because I don't know what stains you have. It's always good to read the design. I should say read the design. Read the instructions, and if in doubt, ask a professional. Angela Who, friction pens will show up again in cold weather, but I found that true Crayola brand washable markers always wash out. Thanks, Angela. I had that problem with friction pens too. They immediately disappeared, but then there was this sort of a white filmy thing that kept showing up. Now, I know some people that swear by them and say that it's not no issue whatsoever. So there's good advice there, and always experiment yourself. Take it for a test drive on your less valuable stuff. Lynn Shepard says that her laundromat now takes debit cards. Wow. Let me see. Any plans for any more STASHBUSTER quilts? Yes, I have them there, but they're just pumped behind a couple of quilts that I do have to get done. Yeah, that's where they are. Let's just see. We're just on the person. On the person who's struggling with light, when I was selling machines, we always recommended that they paint their room white. It reflects the light. And that is actually what I did to my sewing room. I painted it white to reflect the light, and I'm finding I'm very depressed in there because there's not any color on the wall. It's also not very photogenic for a quilting studio, so I may end up putting some color on a couple of the walls just to bring it back. Let's just see here. Let's see. I'm always hello there. I'm always chopping off the triangle points. Any suggestions? Well, that's Marilyn Prout has asked. Always chopping off the triangle points. Any suggestions? Well, I just did a video about what happens when your quilt is small. But if your blocks are too big, first of all, don't worry about chopping off the points. Once the whole quilt is together, it will kind of sort itself out. But that goes back to making sure that your seam is accurate, your cutting is accurate, and your ironing is accurate. So you want to be sure before you start that you've got the correct 1/4 inch seam. You got to nail it right. Go watch my video on how to sew straight and go from there. Start with getting your squares right, and then move into getting your HSTs. I've also got a video on how to make HSTs. So there's lots of different ways to make HSTs. I got another one on 10 different ways of how to make HSTs. If they're bigger and longer, more than likely you're stretching the bias, you're stretching the diagonal, and you need to not pull while you're sewing. You need to maybe starch it so it's a little bit firmer, or use the 2 at a time method. All 3 ways will help you stop pulling on that, but with practice you'll get better. Melissa G is thinking Xmas. I cannot believe it's July already. Well, actually, it's August already. I put away, in the Declutter Challenge, I put away all my holiday fabrics into a box saying, don't need to deal with them until July. And now it's August 1st. I just cannot get in the mood for Christmas. I may make some Halloween stuff before before Labor Day, but thinking of Christmas, that's a little tricky. Can I give tips or do a video on tiny mini blocks for window greeting cards? Sewing small is an advanced skill, so be sure that you want to do that. I think it's easier to do raw edge applique when you're starting out, instead of trying to nail those very tiny blocks. But I'll see if I've got time to do one. You love the quilt behind me. Is that my creation, or do I have a pattern? I talked about this at the very beginning. This is Long Time Gone, and it's by Jen Kingwell. Somebody asked me to talk about starch. So starch is like scaffolding on your fabric. I've talked about starch many times, but I know that there's a number of big quilters out there that just use a ton of starch. If you are doing anything with a bias, That's the only time I personally starch my fabrics before I sew them. And normally I do it at the ironing phase. Other than that, I just don't like the feel of starch in my fabrics. I like them a little bit softer than that. And I have the accuracy and the skills right now that I don't need that starch. But if you're finding that your fabric is stretching on you and things are wonky, I would go back to your ironing. Just make sure you're not swishing your iron first. And you don't need to use starch. In some climates, starch is not even advisable because of the sugars and the starches in it. It attracts some insects. So, yeah. I try to avoid steps that slow me down. And I think starch is one of those. Starching for the sake of just starching is just something that just doesn't work for me. Jody has asked, do I have any plans to do any episodes on long arming? No, not at the moment. I might give a jump start course for what do you do when you get a long arm, but I think that's all I'm qualified to talk about at the moment. I don't feel that I'm at teacher level yet. Susan has asked, when I trim inside corners to reduce bulk for turning a pillow, I worry that it only leaves an 1/8 inch seam at that corner. Is this a problem? No, because there's no stress on that corner. So it shouldn't be an issue. Do I put my quilt in the dryer? I do, but I don't dry it. I don't have an... Nancy Pearson has asked, do I put my quilt in a dryer? And I do. I don't dry it to dryness, but I do it to, like, I don't know what you want to call it. It's not dry, but it's still, there's still a little bit of dampness in it, but that's just because it would take forever to dry, and I just don't have the space to lay it out like that. So that's as far as I do it. Everybody's talking about the friction pens, so there's lots of information going on back and forth there. Holy mackerel, look at this. Oh boy, lots of those. Okay, so Gerald White has asked, what did I do before I got my long arm machine? Did I free motion on my home machine or did I send them out? My first 3 quilts I sent out to Longarm, and that was the end of that. Mainly because I wanted to do it myself. And my local quilt store purchased a long arm, and I took the class and I rented the long arm from then on from there. Then after QuiltCon in 2017, I came home with a new best friend who had a long arm, and she generously allowed me to use it several times a year. And we also made a lot of baby quilts together. So those were the 2 machines that I used before I got a long arm. So I wasn't a brand new beginner, and I wasn't even a brand new beginner on this machine because my friend had a APQS Millie, an older one, but an APQS Millie. So the big differences when I got my own was, one, it was at the right height for me. I am 5'8", and I think they were set up for 5'4" and smaller, so it was really nice to be standing up high. The other big thing was being able to slow down. That was the biggest thing that I had to learn, was I didn't have to rush. I didn't have just a 5-hour increment. I could leave it for the day and come back the next day. It could take me a week even. And it took a little while for that to sink in and really slow down my quilting. And guess what? My accuracy improved and my skills improved when I did that too. So yeah. Oh boy, we're still talking about the quilting pens. Yes. Uh, okay, so T.E. Pendergrass has asked, what is considered thick needles when sewing machine sewing? So it depends on what thread you're using. So normally when you're sewing, like if you're just starting off, an 80 quilting needle, top stitch, or even a universal is perfectly fine. And you're using a 50 weight thread. You could use a 40, you could use a 60. You know, it's not a real hard fast for your first project, but you just don't, you want to just stay in that zone. I like to move up a size when I am quilting. So if I used 80, I like my thread to show. So I go up to a 40 and a 90 quilting needle. And some people would consider 90 a big needle, but they go up even higher. So if you were sewing and top stitching on denim, I would be up at a even a 110. So depends on what you're doing. The bigger the needle, the bigger the eye, the stronger the shaft, the less flex in it. So there's a number of different things that are part of the needle. Cynthia DeLay asks, how long does it usually take to quilt a quilt on a Longarm machine? So it depends what you're doing. Depends on your custom, what kind of customizations you want to do. If you're doing a pantograph, it usually takes a couple of hours. And there are people who have computerized machines, and probably takes around that too. Probably less if it's computerized. One of the big parts is loading the quilt on the machine and taking it off the machine. That's kind of non-negotiable, and different people have different ways of loading. I load mine on with corsage pins, but there's things that you can snap in, there's zippers, and there's a couple of other ways of doing it. So yeah, but you know, like this quilt right here, I think it took me about 5 hours. I think it took me about 5 hours, but I should have gone slower. I might have done a couple of bits of this on my home sewing machine too. I'm pretty sure I did this part, this quarter down here on my home machine, because I had a bulge in it and I had to take some fabric in. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we are at the 140-minute mark. I'm not quite sure which way my chat is going. Let me just see if I can, I think I pulled some out. Okay, I think I've answered all those. Let me just see, what else do I need to tell you? So last week I did a video on my block is too small and 5 different strategies on what to do when they are. And the previous week I did a video on the questions you need to ask yourself before you buy a new machine. And I am enjoying my new machine, my new 790, so much. I realized part of it was that I didn't ask a couple of these questions first. And if you haven't seen it yet, on Karen's Quilt Circle, I was interviewing Brandon Wulff, and he was talking about how he takes advantages of his strengths and what he does to just compensate for his weaknesses. And if you are not aboard yet, Angie and I have already started our YouTube lives for this year, 100 days, 100 blocks. And you can certainly join in the fun. We started yesterday, and I say we as in a royal we. The whole thing started yesterday. This year I am making 66 blocks. That is the pattern that I've laid out. And so I have a couple of days still before I need to get on board. And in fact, I found I lost my pattern, so I've got to desperately dig through my stuff. I think I brought it here to the studio for our live the other week, and I need to figure out where I put it. Anyways, do I have any last questions here? A couple of last questions. Would anyone have any recommendations for quiet projects for slowing at nighttime besides paper piecing? Well, there's always working on your label for your quilt. That is always a nice, small, slow sewing project. You can also applique different shapes onto your quilt. You can spend some time going back over your old quilts and putting on labels on. That's what I have done. And, oh, Rhonda Schelling. Yes, that was a really good interview, wasn't it? I really enjoyed having Brandon. Shirley, you made it. Excellent, excellent. Now, I need to ask all of you, are any of you going to Halifax for Quilt Canada in 2023? I think that'll be a fun, fun place. Jean Bishop Greentree has asked, how often do I do a live? I do a live the first Tuesday of every month, except pretty well the first Tuesday of every month. I try to do it on the other weeks that Karen's Quilt Circle is not coming out. So occasionally the first is a Tuesday, and I will not necessarily do it on that day because it throws out the cadence with the other ones. So first week of the month I do a Q&A. The second week I do a Karen's Quilt Circle. The third week for the next 4 months I will be doing live with Angie, and then the fourth week is my my second Karen's Quilt Circle. So just speaking of Angie, in case you don't know, Angie and I are going on a trip to Panama. We're taking the cruise for the canal, and you can join us. If you have any questions, just go to my website, Just Get It Done Quilts there, and that'll lead you to the tour director. Winnie Peterson said she joined 100 blocks last year and made it through to 35. She's going to jump back in where she is, and that's exactly what you want to do. People who didn't finish last year, that's what this whole wonderful quilt along is about. It is just grabbing, just doing what you can. I'm just putting a link to Angie's pattern if you are interested in joining us, and just do it every year when you have the chance. I know a number of people that including Brandy, including Laura, and a couple of other people that did not get through all the blocks they wanted to get through, and you just join in again. Karen Smith has asked, do I ever do dressmaking? Well, I made an announcement that I was doing a quilt coat, and very generously, Kate Ivor from the Confident Stitcher in Missoula, Montana, has been coaching me. She's been helping me alter my pattern pieces. It's taken 2 sessions, and she's been very patient and very kind and extremely generous in helping me get it done. But last week we made this adjustment, and it just went on like a glove. It was just so amazing how you're going, oh, this is this is not working. I have no idea what's going on, because you're cutting and you're twisting and you're pivoting and taping and pasting it back together, and it feels so perfect now. I can't thank her enough. So my next step is now to take the pattern, and I'm going to make a muslin. Kate said I didn't need to, but I think I do. I just want to have that not the confidence that it works. It's because I'm going to springboard this into making more clothes for myself. So I want to be sure that the pattern fits, and then I can just be altering all sorts of different patterns. So yeah, Yeah, I really like it. So, thank you all for showing up. Oh, I've just enjoyed watching the comments go by. I see Tammy Poo there, and so Becca, you were very active today, helping everybody out. Thank you for your generosity. Lisa Gervais from Ottawa, as well. You're always very generous with your help. And that's the wonderful thing about this community. I've said it before. You guys are just always so kind and so nice, and I really enjoy it. So the next Q&A will be on September 6th. Just in case, I know it's late, but if anybody's here from Holland, I am going to Holland in September. And it's a trip that was left over from 2020. My mother and I were to go to Holland for various ceremonies dealing with the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Holland. My grandfather is buried in a war cemetery near Groesbeck, and this is the makeup trip. This is the makeup trip. So if anybody's there and you've got any ideas of what we should be doing there, or whether we should have a meetup in somewhere, I'm staying in a town called Zupton. Zupton? Or is it Zuptin or Zutpin? I'm not quite sure. But anyways, take care, everyone. Thanks for showing up again, and I will... Let me just see here. What am I supposed to do here? I am supposed to do this. So as always, you can find me online at Instagram, Just Get It Done Quilts, and Facebook. You can go to my website and sign up for my newsletter, and you know about my YouTube because you're here. So take care. Thank you. Hopefully Brandy will be healthy enough to do this now.